Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the place where we really get into the stories shaping, well, everything around us, especially our digital lives. We dig into the headlines, find the surprising stuff, and hopefully help you make sense of it all.
That's the goal.
And today, oh boy, we have a story. It starts like a dream, like winning the lottery almost, but it ends up as this massive, very public digital faceplant.
A real nightmare for the company involved, yeah.
So picture this,
Yeah.
because this actually happened. You're just, doing your thing, maybe checking your phone while waiting for coffee, and boom, a notification pops up. Big letters. Congratulations, you just won a $64,000 boat and trailer.
Wow.
Right? Can you imagine that feeling? That like electric shock, disbelief, then just pure joy. Your mind's racing, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. You're already on the lake, planning trips.
Picking out boat names, looking at cottages you suddenly think you could afford. The possibilities just flood in, and then, just as fast as that dream appeared, it gets, well, obliterated. Another notification, way less exciting. Basically, oops, technical error, you didn't actually win, our bad lol.
Oh, the lull. That just adds insult to injury, doesn't it?
It really does. Feels almost dismissive. And look, this wasn't some small glitch. This was the Tim Hortons roll-up-to-win contest fiasco. 500,000 Canadians.
Yeah.
500,000 got told they won this luxury boat and trailer.
500,000. That number is just staggering.
And then Tim just pulls it back.
Yeah.
Says it was, and this is kind of vague, a software brain fart.
It immediately raises so many questions, doesn't it? I mean, first off, how does a company that big, Tim Hortons, a Canadian institution, practically, let something like this happen on that scale?
Exactly.
And what are the ripples? This is not just disappointment,
Yeah.
right? It goes way deeper than that. It hits trust. It hits legal issues. It hits how we even think about these apps we use every day.
That's precisely what we're diving into today. We want to unpack this whole thing. We'll look at how the contest even evolved, from the old days to the app. We'll get into the nitty-gritty of the glitch itself, what likely went wrong behind the scenes. Then there's the legal side, especially what happened in Quebec, which is fascinating.
Very interesting, yeah.
And ultimately, what does this all mean for us? For digital trust, for consumer rights, in a world where, let's face it, we're living through apps. Because this isn't really just about a boat somebody didn't win.
No, it's fundamentally about the promise a brand makes to its customers, especially in this digital space, and how fragile that can be.
It really is. It shows how tech gives us convenience, sure, but it can also blow up mistakes to a size you just couldn't imagine before. Makes you think about the trust we put in these systems.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's start with the roll-up itself, the one that just completely unraveled. This digital dream that turned into, well, a bit of a mess.
Right.
For a lot of Canadians, especially if you grew up before smartphones were everywhere, roll up the rim to win. It was like a thing, a yearly ritual.
Definitely. A cultural moment almost.
Yeah. You'd finish your coffee, maybe it's freezing outside, and you'd carefully, hopefully, peel back that paper rim on the cup.
Mm-hmm. The little paper tab.
Exactly. And the suspense. You unfold it, hoping it's not just, please play again, which, let's be honest, it usually was.
Almost always.
But you were hoping for that you win. Maybe a free donut, maybe something bigger. It was so physical, You held the result right there. Simple, direct.
There was a satisfaction to it, even if you lost.
Yeah.
That physical act.
Totally. But then, tech happened, like it does to everything. That physical rim rolling.
Yeah.
It slowly started turning into tapping on an app, scanning a QR code.
The digital transformation.
Yeah. And the promise was convenience, right? Faster, maybe more ways to play, do it anywhere, no more sticky rims, just tap, tap, tap. It was meant to be the modern way, slicker, easier.
And that move, that shift to digital for loyalty programs, for contests, it's everywhere. It's not just Tim Hortons. Think about retail, travel, banking. Everyone's pushing you towards their app. Companies love it because it streamlines things. They get tons of data. Maybe they cut costs on physical materials. And for us, the users, well, it is convenient sometimes. It fits how we live now.
Yeah, no doubt.
But, and this is the big but, when you take away that physical part, that tangible proof, you're putting a huge amount of faith in the software, in the code, in the digital promise the app makes.
And if that breaks?
If that breaks, rebuilding the trust is incredibly hard, much harder than just fixing a paper process.
Which leads us right into the heart of it, the glitch. The one where 500,000 people suddenly thought they were boat owners.
Right.
So in the latest all-digital roll-up to win, the Tim Hortons app just went rogue, I guess. It sent out this notification to 500,000 users saying they'd won the grand prize. A luxury boat and trailer Worth, what, $64,000?
$64,000, yeah. A life-changing amount for most people.
Seriously, just pause and really put yourself in that spot. You listening right now. You get that notification. What's the first thing you feel?
Adrenaline, disbelief, then pure crazy excitement.
You're grabbing your phone, right? Texting everyone you know. Maybe you're already Googling boat launch ramps near me or how to tow a boat.
Or selling my car for a truck. You're making plans instantly. That Canadian dream of summer on the lake just landed in your lap.
It totally reshapes your whole day, maybe your whole year's plans in that split second.
Mm-hmm.
And then, bam, the digital hammer comes down. Another message, cold, clinical. Sorry for the confusion. No boat, no trailer, no compensation. Here's a free coffee. Oh, and our eternal shame and that infamous lull.
The emotional whiplash must have been intense, from that absolute peak of thinking you've won $64,000 to being offered a coffee worth, what, $2? And an apology that sounds like a teenager's text message.
It's jarring. It feels insulting almost. Like the scale of the mistake wasn't understood. That lull just minimizes the whole thing. Yeah. For 500,000 people, that brief dream shattered pretty harshly.
And the scale, we have to keep coming back to that. 500,000. That's not a small, isolated bug affecting a few users.
No.
That number tells you something fundamental broke. It suggests it wasn't just a random glitch, but maybe a core issue in how the contest logic was built, or how it was rolled out, or maybe how it was being monitored or not monitored in real time.
Right.
A tiny error, okay, that happens, but something that hits 500,000 people. That points to a failure in the system's basic design, or maybe in the testing before it went live. Or just a complete lack of safety nets to catch something this big.
It makes the potential damage reputationally and legally just explode.
Exponentially. The wider the blast radius, the bigger the fallout, and the louder people are going to shout about it.
And shout they did.
Yeah.
Which brings us neatly to the legal side of things. Because while Tim's was sending out coffee apologies, Quebec wasn't having it.
No, Quebec reacted very differently. And very quickly.
Almost immediately, right? A class action lawsuit got the green light. Specifically for Quebec residents affected by this boat blunder. So why Quebec? What's special there? Our sources point out that Quebec has, and I'm quoting here, actual consumer protection laws, which implies, well, that maybe other places don't, or not to the same degree.
Well, it implies a more robust framework, certainly. Quebec's Consumer Protection Act, the CPA, it's known for being quite strong. It puts a lot of emphasis on protecting consumers from misleading advertising or unfair business practices.
You can't just say, oops, tech error, and walk away.
Not so easily, no. Especially when a company makes a very public declaration, even if it's through an app. The CPA generally holds businesses accountable for the representations they make. If the average consumer could reasonably believe they won based on the company's own notification...
Especially for a huge prize like a boat.
Exactly. The law there leans towards protecting the consumer's reasonable expectation. So if a company screws up publicly, as the source put it, there are likely to be real legal consequences. It's not just about intent. It's about the impact of the misleading information, even if it was unintentional.
So the glitch wasn't just a tech problem, it became a legal problem, at least in Quebec.
Precisely. It crossed that line. The scale of it, the value, and maybe the perception of how Tim Hortons handled it initially. All that turned it from a simple glitch into this software faceplant with significant legal ramifications.
Okay, so this whole thing really throws a spotlight on how consumer protection varies wildly, depending on where you are, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Especially with digital stuff.
It really does. It highlights a growing tension. Companies operate globally, digitally, crossing borders with ease. But the law is protecting consumers. They're still mostly local, tied to specific provinces or states or countries.
Right. So what's just a bad PR day in one place could be a major lawsuit somewhere else.
Exactly. And it forces us to ask some really tough questions about these digital promises. When your phone buzzes and the official app of a huge brand tells you something significant like, you won $64K, what legal weight does that carry?
Is it like a contract? Or just pixels on a screen?
That's the multi-million-dollar question, isn't it? How do we legally interpret these digital notifications? Companies now have to be incredibly careful about the expectations they set, intentionally or not, through their apps, because software glitches will happen.
Yeah, seems inevitable.
So how do you manage that reality against the promises your tech is making? This Quebec lawsuit, win or lose, could really push companies everywhere to rethink how they design contests, how they test them, how they communicate wins, and what happens when things go wrong.
It sends a message that the digital world isn't some lawless frontier.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
It reinforces that real-world accountability applies online, maybe even more so because of the scale digital enables. Companies need to ask, are our apps accidentally writing checks our legal department can't cash?
It's a sobering thought. And it makes you want to look closer at that technical error itself. Our source had that funny line about it being coded using notepad.exe while connected to Starbucks Wi-Fi.
Yeah, a bit of hyperbole there.
Obviously. But it makes a point, right? It hints that maybe the whole development process was less than robust.
It definitely implies a lack of professional rigor, yeah. Notepad.exe is shorthand for maybe not using the right tools, or proper version control, or automated testing, or code reviews, all the stuff that's standard practice in serious software development.
Right.
It suggests that the foundations might have been shaky. And the most likely technical culprit, based on what happened, it sounds like the notification went out before the system actually knew for sure who won.
Like the cart before the horse.
Exactly, a fundamental design flaw. In any system dealing with something valuable, the front end, what you see, should only display something after the back end. The core logic has definitively confirmed it. The back end has to be the single source of truth.
Okay.
If the notification system runs ahead of that confirmation, you get phantom wins. You get 500,000 phantom boats. It points to maybe a disconnect between different parts of the system or a failure to ensure one step absolutely completes before the next one starts. That's a classic kind of software failure mode.
So it's not just the code, but how the whole system fits together and how it's checked. Which brings us to that other zinger from the source. QA was out getting Timbits and never came back.
Another funny line, but it points to a potentially massive failure in quality assurance, or QA.
That sounds serious. QA isn't just clicking buttons, is it?
Oh, not at all. Proper QA is about rigorously testing everything, not just does the button work, but what happens if 100,000 people click the button at the same time? What happens if the network is slow? What happens if someone tries to cheat? What happens under maximum stress?
All the weird edge cases.
Exactly. Stress testing, load testing, security testing, integration testing, making sure all the pieces work together correctly under all sorts of conditions. The source joking about QA implies maybe these weren't done thoroughly. Simulating thousands of taps, swipes, glitches, testing for weird user behavior, that's all part of preventing disasters.
And if you hit 500,000 people with the same error?
It strongly suggests the testing missed something fundamental or wasn't done at a realistic scale. You need to simulate massive numbers of users hitting the system simultaneously to find these kinds of breaking points before you go live.
So the system wasn't really battle-tested for the real world.
It certainly seems possible, based on the outcome. Proper load testing might have revealed this vulnerability that under certain conditions, the notification could be sent erroneously to a huge number of people. The scale implies it wasn't just a minor bug.
Okay, so if you wanted to build this right, to prevent this kind of catastrophe, what would you need? What seemed to be missing here?
Well, based on what happened, a few things seem obvious. First, secure game logic. That's non-negotiable. No notification goes out ever unless the backend has triple-checked and confirmed with absolute certainty that this person is a legitimate winner according to the rules. The backend must be the unbreakable source of truth.
Makes sense.
That means really careful design, validation checks everywhere, maybe using things like database transactions to make sure the whole win and notify process either works perfectly or fails completely, leaving no mess behind.
Right, no half wins.
Exactly. Second, you need some kind of live rollback system or at least incredibly fast incident response. The source joked about hitting undo, right?
Yeah.
In a live system serving millions, you need the ability to spot an error immediately, stop it from spreading, and ideally reverse the damage cleanly and quickly. That takes sophisticated monitoring, automatic alerts, and pre-planned, tested procedures to roll back mistakes without breaking things further. It's like having an emergency brake and knowing exactly how to use
A
one.
working panic button.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And third, and this isn't strictly tech, but it's crucial, effective crisis communications. The source said Tim's should have owned it better, offered more than a latte. A robust system isn't just about preventing errors, it's about having a plan for when they happen, because they will. That means being ready to communicate instantly, honestly, empathetically, taking responsibility, offering real solutions or compensation that acknowledges the screw-up, not minimizes it.
So it wasn't just one thing. It was potentially a failure across the board. Design, testing, operations, communication.
It really looks that way. It suggests maybe a breakdown in multiple stages of the process. Building something this big requires not just good code, but good processes, intense testing that simulates reality, and a solid plan for when things go sideways, which they did spectacularly.
And all of this, the tech, the legal stuff, it all comes down to something less tangible, but maybe more important. Trust. The source nailed it. This isn't just about a boat. It's about trust.
Absolutely. That's the core issue.
Every time you interact with a brand online, especially when it tells you something exciting like you won, it's making a kind of promise, isn't it? It creates this instant expectation.
A micro moment of belief.
And when that promise gets broken, even by a technical error, it's not just disappointing. It feels like a small betrayal. It chips away at that trust you had in the brand. That emotional up and down is damaging.
It really is. Brand trust is so hard-earned and so easily lost. It's built slowly over time through consistent good experiences, reliability, honesty, keeping promises. An incident like this, it can undo years of that careful trust building in an instant. When the company's own app delivers such a massive false promise, people start questioning everything. Not just the contest, but the reliability of their app, their tech, maybe even their basic competence or honesty.
And rebuilding that, that's a long haul.
A very long, very expensive haul, much harder than fixing code or settling a lawsuit. It requires genuine, sustained effort to prove you're trustworthy again.
And in today's world, these mistakes don't just get forgotten, they get memed.
Yeah.
The source had that line, 500,000 Canadians won a boat. Then they didn't. That's not a glitch. That's comedy.
That's the reality of social media, isn't it? It's a double-edged sword. Years ago, a big corporate mistake might be news for a day or two.
Yeah, then gone.
Now, it can become internet history, a running joke, a meme that lives forever. And when your company becomes a meme for messing up,
You've lost control of the story.
completely, the internet owns it. And the narrative is usually critical, often funny, and incredibly hard to shake. It makes reputation repair almost impossible because the joke keeps getting repeated, reinforcing that negative image. Every mention of the Tim Hortons boat is a little reminder of the failure.
Okay, so pulling this all together, what are the big lessons here? What should other companies, anyone building apps or running digital promotions, take away from this whole saga?
Well, I think there are a few really critical ones. First, obviously, invest in robust digital infrastructure. Don't skimp on the back end, the security, the scalability, especially if your app is core to your customer relationship. It needs to be solid.
Foundational stuff.
Absolutely. Second, take quality assurance and security incredibly seriously. Test everything. Simulate real-world chaos. Think about edge cases, high load, potential failures. Build security in from the start.
Right.
Don't treat QA as just a final checkbox.
Right, needs to be deep.
Deep and continuous. Third, have a crisis communication plan ready before you need it. Know how you'll respond when things go wrong. Be prepared to be transparent, honest, empathetic, and offer meaningful solutions. Don't try to minimize or hide it.
Own the mistake.
Own it. And finally, understand that in this digital age, a glitch is rarely just a glitch. It can have massive legal, financial, and reputational fallout. The stakes are incredibly high. Like the source said, if you're building apps that touch millions, don't roll up unless you've backed it up.
That really sums it up, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You need the tech, the process, and the foresight to handle the power your digital platforms wield.
Exactly.
Wow. Well, this deep dive certainly took us through the ringer. From 500,000 people nearly getting boats to the intricacies of Quebec consumer law and these really fundamental questions about digital trust.
It's a perfect, if unfortunate, case study of how technology, trust, and the law are all tangled up together now. A single app notification carries so much weight.
It really does. Which leaves us with a final thought for you, our listener. As you navigate this world full of apps making promises, big wins, confirmed bookings, critical alerts, how much faith should you really place in that instant notification that you won or confirmed message? And maybe, what's our responsibility as users? Do we need to be more aware of the fine print, more skeptical maybe?
Yeah.
What happens when that digital promise just evaporates?
That's a great question. And building on it, what safeguards do you think we need universally to protect people from these kinds of digital letdowns? And who makes sure they happen? Is it governments, industry groups, or is it ultimately up to us, the consumers, to be vigilant?
Lots to think about there. No easy answers, I suspect.
Definitely not. But questions we'll all keep facing as our world gets more and more digital.